Sometimes the most dangerous thing a man can see is a black woman who isn't afraid of his badge. Rain hammered the streets of downtown Atlanta just after midnight, turning the pavement into a river of neon reflections beneath the glow of traffic lights and storefront signs. The city was still awake, restless and humming, alive with distant sirens, revving engines, and the soft pulse of music leaking from rooftop bars. And cutting through all of it like a shadow moving too fast to catch was a black Yamaha sport bike weaving smoothly between lanes, its engine growling low beneath the storm. Officer Ryan Keller spotted the motorcycle from 2 blocks away and immediately narrowed his eyes. Something about the rider bothered him before he even saw her face. Maybe it was the way she rode with confidence. Maybe it was the expensive bike. Or maybe it was simply the fact that a black woman in a leather jacket and dark helmet didn't fit the image he believed belonged on these streets at this hour. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel as he flipped on the lights of his patrol car. Red and blue flashes exploded across the wet asphalt behind her. "Dispatch, I'm initiating a traffic stop," Ryan muttered into the radio, already accelerating. The bike slowed without resistance and pulled beneath the flickering glow of an old gas station canopy just off Peachtree Street. Water dripped steadily from the edges of the metal roof as the rider calmly killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the woman slowly removed her helmet. Long dark curls spilled onto the shoulders of her jacket, damp from the rain but perfectly composed despite the weather. Her expression was unreadable, calm, focused, the kind of calm that irritated men like Ryan Keller the most. He stepped out of the cruiser, boots splashing through shallow puddles as he approached her aggressively. "License and registration," he snapped without greeting. The woman reached slowly into her jacket pocket. "Was I speeding, officer?" Her voice was controlled, smooth, educated. Ryan ignored the question entirely. His flashlight drifted over the motorcycle. Expensive custom detailing. Federal parking. Decal partially hidden beneath the rear plate. He noticed it for only half a second before dismissing it. "Step off the bike," he ordered. She stared at him quietly. "Is there a reason?" Ryan smirked faintly. "You people always got questions when law enforcement does its job." The words hung in the cold air beneath the sound of falling rain. Nearby, 2 men pumping gas glanced toward the scene before quickly looking away. The woman stepped off the motorcycle slowly, her boots touching the soaked pavement with measured calm. No fear, no panic. Somehow that made Ryan more irritated than if she had yelled. "Hands where I can see them," he barked. She obeyed without resistance. Ryan moved behind her and grabbed her wrists harder than necessary, snapping handcuffs into place while the flashing lights reflected across the steel. One of the bystanders quietly lifted a phone, recording from a distance. "Officer," the woman said carefully, "I strongly advise you to think about what you're doing." Ryan leaned closer, rainwater dripping from the edge of his cap. "Lady, you're not in a position to advise anybody tonight." But the woman didn't react emotionally. She simply turned her head slightly toward him, her eyes colder now than the storm around them. Then she spoke 6 words that caused the young rookie sitting inside Ryan's patrol car to suddenly stop breathing. "Have you checked the federal registry yet?" The rain seemed to grow heavier after those 6 words left her mouth. Officer Ryan Keller stared at the woman for a second longer than he intended, but only because something about the way she said it unsettled him. There was no panic in her voice, no desperation. Most people changed the moment the handcuffs clicked around their wrists. They argued, begged, cried, or got angry. But this woman standing beneath the flickering gas station lights looked almost disappointed, as if she had expected better from him. Ryan quickly pushed the feeling away. "Federal registry?" He scoffed loudly enough for the rookie in the patrol car to hear. "Everybody suddenly works for the government when they get caught." The young officer inside the cruiser, Tyler Dawson, shifted uneasily. In his seat, he had only been on the force for 8 months, still young enough to believe procedure mattered more than ego. He glanced again at the black sport bike parked beneath the rain. Something about it felt expensive in a way police salaries did not usually encounter on midnight traffic stops. Custom carbon detailing. Fresh performance tires. Federal parking permit beneath the registration tag. Tyler swallowed hard. "Maybe we should run her name first," he suggested carefully through the open window. Ryan shot him an irritated look immediately. "I know how to do my job. The woman remained perfectly still while rainwater rolled down the sleeves of her leather jacket. Passing headlights illuminated her face in flashes of white and red. Calm eyes, sharp features, controlled breathing. She looked directly at Tyler instead of Ryan now, almost as if she already knew which one of them still had a conscience left. "Officer Dawson," she said quietly. Tyler blinked in surprise. "How do you know my name?" Ryan stiffened instantly. Tyler had not introduced himself. Neither had Ryan. The woman tilted her head slightly toward the rookie's chest, where his rain-soaked badge reflected beneath the gas station light. "Observation matters," she answered. Ryan grabbed her arm and guided her toward the cruiser with more force than necessary. "Save the attitude for processing." Nearby, the man recording with his phone took a cautious step closer. Another car had slowed near the intersection, the driver watching the scene unfold through fogged windows. Atlanta had seen enough videos like this over the years for people to recognize when tension was building. Ryan opened the back door of the cruiser. "Get in." The woman paused before entering. "Do you usually detain people without stating probable cause?" Ryan laughed under his breath. "Lady, riding through a high-crime zone after midnight on an unregistered performance bike gives me plenty of probable cause." "The motorcycle is registered," she replied calmly. "And this neighborhood only became high crime after your precinct shut down the investigations unit 2 years ago." Tyler looked up sharply at that. Ryan's expression darkened. "You think you know this city?" he snapped. The woman slowly sat inside the cruiser, the handcuffs glinting beneath the overhead light. "I know enough to recognize corruption when I see it." Silence followed her words for a moment. Even the rain outside seemed quieter somehow. Ryan slammed the door shut harder than necessary. Tyler stepped out of the front seat once Ryan moved away from the vehicle. "Seriously," the rookie whispered. "Maybe we should contact dispatch before booking her." Ryan rubbed water from his jaw, frustrated now for reasons he could not fully explain. "You letting her get inside your head already?" Tyler hesitated. "No, sir. It is just, she does not seem scared." Ryan glanced through the cruiser window at the woman sitting silently in the back seat. She was looking out at the city lights beyond the rain-streaked glass with the composure of someone waiting for a clock to strike midnight. Then Ryan noticed something else. She was smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not an emotional one. A patient smile. Like someone who already knew how the night was going to end. The drive to Midtown Precinct took 11 minutes, but for Officer Tyler Dawson it felt much longer. Rain rolled across the windshield in uneven waves while the cruiser moved through nearly empty streets glowing under traffic lights and storefront signs. Nobody inside the vehicle spoke. Ryan Keller drove with one hand on the wheel, jaw clenched tight, occasionally glancing into the rearview mirror at the woman sitting behind him. But every time he looked, she was exactly the same. Calm, upright, watching the city slide past the windows as if she had already memorized every street. Tyler tried to focus on the police scanner chatter filling the silence, but his attention kept drifting back to her. Something about the situation felt wrong now. Not procedurally wrong. Worse than that. Personally wrong. The woman finally broke the silence as they crossed over the interstate bridge downtown. "How long has Officer Keller been assigned to night enforcement?" Ryan immediately answered before Tyler could speak. "Long enough to know criminals when he sees them." The woman nodded slowly. "Interesting." Ryan frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" She looked out at the Atlanta skyline ahead of them, towering glass buildings cutting into the storm clouds above the city. "It means patterns eventually become predictable." Tyler noticed Ryan grip the steering wheel harder after that. Midtown Precinct stood beneath harsh white floodlights like a concrete fortress against the rain. Officers moved in and out of the building under umbrellas, while patrol cars lined the soaked parking lot in neat rows. The moment Ryan parked, the woman calmly stepped out of the cruiser without resistance. Several officers near the entrance glanced over immediately, not because of the handcuffs, not because of the motorcycle helmet Tyler carried behind her, but because of the strange energy surrounding the scene. The woman walked through the station doors with the confidence of someone entering a building she already understood. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, while dispatch radios crackled nonstop behind the front desk. Phones rang. Officers laughed near the coffee station. A television mounted in the corner played late-night local news coverage about city budget cuts and rising public distrust in law enforcement. Yet somehow, When Ryan escorted the woman through booking, conversations slowly began fading around them. People noticed her. Tyler saw it immediately. One desk sergeant lowered his coffee cup halfway after looking at her face. Another officer stared at the federal decal attached to her motorcycle keys sitting inside the evidence tray. "What are we charging her with?" the desk sergeant finally asked. Ryan answered quickly. "Suspicious conduct. Failure to cooperate. Possible stolen vehicle investigation." The woman tilted her head slightly. "That is not how probable cause works." Ryan ignored her. Tyler did not. He watched the desk sergeant hesitate before typing into the system. "Name?" the sergeant asked. The woman met his eyes calmly. "Naomi Carter." The sound of typing stopped instantly for half a second. Barely noticeable. But Tyler noticed. The desk sergeant looked up slowly now. "You got identification on you?" Naomi glanced toward Ryan. Officer Keller preferred handcuffs over verification. A couple officers nearby exchanged uncomfortable looks. Ryan stepped closer, trying to regain control of the room. "Run the name." The sergeant obeyed quietly, fingers moving across the keyboard while rain rattled softly against the precinct windows. Then the atmosphere changed. Tyler saw it happen in real time. The sergeant's posture stiffened. His eyes widened slightly at the computer screen before quickly narrowing again. "Ryan," he said carefully, "can I talk to you for a second?" Ryan looked annoyed already. "What now?" The sergeant lowered his voice, but not enough to keep Tyler from hearing. "Her name triggered restricted federal access." Ryan laughed once. "So what? Half these people fake credentials." But the sergeant was no longer looking at Ryan. He was staring directly at Naomi now, with visible tension creeping into his face. And Naomi, still standing there in soaked black leather with silver handcuffs around her wrists, gave him the same patient smile she had worn inside the cruiser. Like someone silently waiting for the rest of the room to finally catch up. You can learn a lot about a police station by watching what happens when fear enters the room. Midtown Precinct had always been loud at night. Officers trading stories near the coffee machine. Dispatch radios crackling nonstop. Televisions muttering weather reports nobody listened to. But the moment Naomi Carter's name triggered the restricted federal alert, the atmosphere shifted in a way Tyler Dawson could physically feel. The station did not become silent all at once. It happened slowly. One conversation ended early. Someone lowered the volume on the television. A detective near the hallway stopped walking after overhearing the desk sergeant whisper something under his breath. And through all of it, Naomi remained perfectly calm beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, rainwater still dripping from the edge of her jacket sleeves onto the booking floor. Ryan Keller noticed the tension too, but instead of caution, irritation spread across his face. "What exactly did the system say?" he demanded. The desk sergeant hesitated before rotating the monitor slightly away from him. "Restricted federal access," he repeated quietly. "Judicial branch authorization required." Ryan laughed again, but there was less confidence in it now. Somebody flagged her by mistake. Naomi finally spoke. "No mistake." Ryan ignored her and reached for the keyboard himself. The moment his hand touched the desk, the monitor flashed red again. "Access limited. Federal oversight active. Contact authorized supervisor." Tyler watched Ryan's expression tighten. It was subtle, barely visible, but for the first time that night, uncertainty entered his eyes. Naomi studied the room carefully while officers pretended not to stare at her. Her gaze drifted across the precinct walls, the security cameras, the detective's bullpen near the back offices. Then she noticed something that made her pause. A bulletin board beside the evidence room. Missing case files. Seized property reports. Narcotics inventory transfers. Most people would not have looked twice. But Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly at one particular document hanging crooked beneath the others. Warehouse 14B. Evidence relocation authorization. Signed 3 months ago. Tyler saw her staring at it. "What?" he asked quietly before realizing he probably should not have. Naomi looked at him directly. "Who authorized the transfer?" Tyler frowned. "I do not know." Ryan cut in sharply. "You do not need to answer her questions." But Naomi had already noticed something else. The signature at the bottom of the form did not match the printed name beneath it. Captain Marcus Hale, a respected supervisor inside Midtown Precinct. Decorated officer. Public spokesman. Community task force leader. Naomi looked away from the board slowly, almost thoughtfully. "Interesting," she murmured again. Ryan was losing patience now. You keep saying that. What exactly is so interesting? Naomi met his eyes. The fact that your station still hangs forged evidence reports in public view. Tyler felt the air leave his lungs. A detective across the room suddenly stopped pretending not to listen. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Careful. Naomi did not move. You should take your own advice. Before Ryan could answer, another officer entered through the side hallway carrying a sealed manila envelope. He froze slightly after noticing Naomi standing in booking. Ryan immediately walked toward him. What is that? The officer hesitated. Captain Hale asked me to drop this in evidence lockup. Naomi's eyes moved toward the envelope. No labels. No chain of custody barcode. No documentation attached. Ryan quickly took it from the officer's hands before anyone else could look too closely. I will handle it. Tyler noticed Naomi watching the exchange carefully now. Not emotionally. Not angrily. Like someone mentally connecting pieces of a puzzle she had already started solving long ago. Then Naomi looked toward the security camera mounted above booking. Tell me something, Officer Dawson, she said calmly. How often do your cameras mysteriously stop working around evidence transfers? Nobody answered her. Because suddenly, nobody in that room seemed sure anymore whether they were processing a suspect or standing inside the middle of an investigation. Naomi Carter had learned a long time ago that corruption rarely announced itself loudly. It lived in small things. In signatures people stopped questioning. In evidence that disappeared one box at a time. In officers who became nervous whenever someone asked the wrong question. And standing inside Midtown Precinct beneath cold fluorescent lights, she could feel years of hidden decay pressing against the walls around her like moisture trapped inside concrete. Ryan Keller shoved the sealed envelope onto the evidence counter and turned back toward her with forced confidence. You think because you memorized a few legal terms you can intimidate this department? Naomi did not answer immediately. Her eyes drifted past him toward the detective's hallway where two officers had quietly stopped talking the moment she arrived. One of them immediately looked away when she noticed him watching. Fear was spreading now. Not panic yet, but recognition. The dangerous kind. Tyler Dawson remained near the booking desk pretending to organize paperwork while secretly listening to every word. The rookie could feel something unraveling around him, even if he did not fully understand it yet. Naomi finally spoke softly. No, Officer Keller. I think your department has been intimidating itself for a very long time. Ryan stepped closer again. You got a lot to say for somebody in handcuffs. Naomi slowly lifted her cuffed wrist just enough for the steel to catch the overhead light. You still believe these mean you are in control. The words settled heavily over the room. Somewhere deeper inside the precinct, a printer began spitting out paperwork nonstop. Phones rang unanswered. Rain tapped steadily against the windows overlooking the parking lot, where Naomi's black sport bike still sat beneath flashing security lights. Tyler glanced toward it through the glass. The motorcycle no longer looked rebellious to him now. It looked deliberate. Like every detail about tonight had been chosen for a reason. Naomi noticed his expression. Do you ride, Officer Dawson? Tyler blinked. What? Motorcycles? He hesitated awkwardly. No, Naomi nodded faintly. Most people assume sport bikes are about speed. They are not. They are about balance. One mistake at high speed, and everything collapses. Ryan rolled his eyes. Enough with the speeches. But Naomi continued looking at Tyler instead. The first thing they teach you when you ride is this. Your eyes determine your survival. If you stare at danger too long, eventually you drive directly into it. Tyler swallowed hard because somehow he knew she was no longer talking about motorcycles. Ryan grabbed a booking form from the counter aggressively. Print her for processing. The desk sergeant did not move. Ryan, do it. The older man hesitated again before lowering his voice. Captain Hale is not answering calls. That got everyone's attention. Ryan frowned immediately. What do you mean he is not answering? I mean nobody can reach him. Naomi's expression did not change, but Tyler noticed something subtle for the first time that night. Satisfaction. Small. Controlled. Almost invisible. Yet definitely there. Ryan immediately reached for his phone and walked several feet away, speaking in a low, frustrated voice. Naomi calmly sat down on the metal booking bench. While the room continued shifting around her, the station no longer felt organized. Officers moved differently now. Conversations stopped the moment she looked their direction. One detective quietly logged out of his computer entirely before disappearing into the back offices. Another officer removed a file folder from the evidence shelf and carried it somewhere Tyler could not see. Naomi watched all of it silently, like someone observing dominoes beginning to tilt. Tyler finally stepped closer to her. "Who are you really?" he asked under his breath. Naomi looked directly into his eyes for the first time since arriving at the station. Her voice remained calm, almost gentle. "Someone who spent 8 months watching this department bury evidence, protect trafficking routes, manipulate reports, and destroy lives while good officers convinced themselves it was normal." Tyler felt cold all over despite the overheated station air. "That is impossible." Naomi held his gaze. "No, Officer Dawson. What is impossible is believing nobody was eventually going to notice." Then the lights inside the precinct flickered once. Just once. But in that brief second of darkness, every officer in the room suddenly looked afraid. There is a moment in every collapsing system when people stop pretending everything is normal. Midtown Precinct reached that moment just after 1:17 in the morning. The flickering lights steadied again, but the tension remained hanging over the station like smoke trapped beneath the ceiling. Officers moved faster now. Nervous glances replaced casual conversation. Phone calls were whispered instead of spoken openly. And through all of it, Naomi Carter sat calmly on the booking bench with silver cuffs around her wrists, as if she were the only person in the building not surprised by what was happening. Ryan Keller paced near the front desk with his phone pressed tightly against his ear. "Call him again," he snapped. "I do not care if he is asleep." Nobody answered immediately. Tyler Dawson stood frozen beside the evidence counter watching detectives quietly remove folders from filing cabinets deeper inside the station. One officer carried a cardboard archive box toward the rear exit before suddenly stopping after noticing Naomi looking in his direction. He quickly turned around and disappeared into another hallway instead. Naomi watched the movement carefully. "They are cleaning already," she said softly. Tyler looked at her. "What?" "People destroy evidence long before they confess." Ryan ended his call abruptly and walked back toward her. His patience was gone now. What remained beneath his expression was something colder. Fear disguised as anger. "You think you are smart?" he asked. Naomi met his stare evenly. "No. I think you underestimated who was paying attention." Ryan leaned down slightly toward her. "You have no idea how this city works." Naomi's voice stayed perfectly level. "Actually, Officer Keller, I know exactly how this city works. That is why I spent 8 months documenting it." Tyler felt his stomach tighten. 8 months. The number echoed in his head. This was not random. Not an accident. Not a misunderstanding during a traffic stop. Whatever Naomi Carter really was, she had walked into this precinct already knowing things nobody else should have known. Ryan slammed both hands onto the booking counter hard enough to make nearby officers jump. "Enough." The station went quiet again. Naomi did not flinch. "You still believe intimidation changes facts." Ryan grabbed a blank statement form from the desk and shoved it toward her. "Sign this." Naomi glanced down at the paperwork. Suspicious conduct. Resisting lawful instructions. Vehicle investigation pending. Every line written vaguely enough to justify the arrest later, if necessary. Naomi looked back up slowly. False documentation usually works better when the cameras are functioning. Ryan's jaw tightened instantly. Tyler turned toward the security monitor wall near dispatch. Half the internal feeds had suddenly gone dark. "That is maintenance," Ryan said quickly. Naomi almost smiled again. At 1 in the morning, nobody answered. Rain continued sliding down the station windows, while thunder rolled somewhere far across the city skyline. Naomi leaned back slightly against the bench, studying Ryan with unsettling calm. "You know what the problem is with corruption, Officer Keller?" He said nothing. Eventually, people inside the system stopped being loyal to each other. Tyler saw several officers quietly avoid eye contact after she said that. One detective abruptly walked out of the room entirely. Another logged off his workstation and grabbed his jacket without explanation. Ryan noticed too. The room was slipping away from him one person at a time. Then Naomi spoke the words that changed everything. "You should have checked the Federal Registry before putting those cuffs on me." Ryan stared at her. "Who are you?" For the first time all night, Naomi's expression hardened slightly. Not emotional. Not angry. Authoritative. The kind of authority that does not need to raise its voice. The woman who signed the sealed warrants connected to Warehouse 14B. Tyler felt the blood drain from his face. Ryan stepped backward before catching himself. Warehouse 14B. The forged evidence transfer. The sealed envelope. Captain Hale disappearing. Suddenly all of it connected at once. Before anyone could speak again, every computer screen inside Midtown Precinct flashed black simultaneously. Dispatch radios erupted with overlapping voices. Then the front entrance doors burst open beneath the sound of pounding rain outside, and every officer in the station turned toward the lobby at the exact same moment. Rain and silence entered the precinct together. The front doors slammed open beneath the force of the storm outside, and a wave of black tactical jackets flooded into the lobby with controlled precision. No shouting, no chaos, just the heavy sound of boots against tile floors and the unmistakable atmosphere of authority taking over a room that had suddenly forgotten who controlled it. Bright yellow letters stretched across the backs of the jackets. FBI. Every officer inside Midtown Precinct froze. Tyler Dawson felt his heartbeat hammer against his ribs as at least a dozen federal agents moved through the station in coordinated silence, securing exits, speaking quietly into earpieces, and placing sealed evidence cases onto the booking counter. The lead agent stepped forward through the center of the room, rainwater dripping from the shoulders of his dark coat. Mid-40s. Calm eyes. Controlled posture. The kind of man who did not need to announce power because everybody around him already understood it. Agent Daniel Brooks, he said evenly while scanning the room. Nobody leaves this building. Ryan Keller immediately straightened. What the hell is this? Agent Brooks barely looked at him. His attention moved directly toward Naomi Carter, sitting calmly on the booking bench beneath the fluorescent lights. For the first time all night, Tyler saw something change in the room around her. Respect. Real respect. Brooks walked toward Naomi without hesitation. Your Honor, he said quietly. Sorry we are late. Half the station seemed to stop breathing. Ryan stared at Naomi as if his brain could no longer process what he was hearing. Your Honor. Brooks finally turned toward him now, expression cold. Federal Judge Naomi Carter. The words landed like thunder inside the precinct. One officer near dispatch actually took a step backward. Another quietly removed his badge from his belt and set it onto a desk without anyone noticing except Tyler. Ryan laughed once under his breath, but it sounded broken now. No, that is impossible. Naomi slowly stood from the booking bench while Agent Brooks unlocked the handcuffs from her wrists. The sharp click of the metal opening echoed louder than it should have in the suddenly silent station. Naomi rubbed her wrists once before calmly straightening the sleeves of her rain-darkened jacket. No anger, no revenge, just composure. You should never mistake calmness for weakness, Officer Keller, she said softly. Ryan looked around desperately now. Captain Hale authorized this stop. He knew about the warehouse investigation. Agent Brooks exchanged a brief glance with Naomi before speaking again. Captain Marcus Hale was taken into federal custody 32 minutes ago. The room erupted into whispers immediately. Tyler felt cold all over. 32 minutes ago. That meant the operation had already begun before Naomi was even brought into the precinct. Before Ryan filed paperwork. Before the forged reports. Before any of them realized they were being watched. Naomi slowly walked toward the evidence counter where the sealed envelope still sat untouched beneath fluorescent light. That envelope contains rerouted narcotics inventory tied to 3 missing evidence cases, she said calmly. The signatures are forged. The surveillance logs were altered. And every transfer originated from officers assigned to this station. Agent Brooks nodded once toward another team entering the records room. Secure all hard drives. Nobody touches the evidence lockers. Several officers immediately lowered their heads. Others simply stared at the floor in silence. Tyler looked around the station and realized something terrifying. Nobody seemed shocked by the accusations anymore. Only afraid they had finally been exposed. Ryan stepped toward Naomi one final time, voice strained now. You planned this. Naomi met his eyes evenly. No, Officer Keller. You planned this yourselves. I only documented it. Outside, lightning flashed across the Atlanta skyline, while FBI vehicles continued pulling into the parking lot one after another. Red and blue lights reflected across the soaked pavement and through the precinct windows like the city itself was finally waking up. Tyler watched Naomi standing there beside the booking desk, federal agents moving around her with quiet urgency, and understood the truth at last. The woman Ryan Keller had humiliated in handcuffs was never trapped inside this station. Everyone else was. By 2:30 in the morning, Atlanta no longer belonged to Midtown Precinct. It belonged to the headlines that were about to explode across the country. Rain still poured outside, washing over streets now crowded with federal vehicles, investigative units, and satellite news vans gathering beyond the police barricades. Inside the station, the atmosphere had completely changed. Officers who once walked the halls with swagger now sat silently against walls clutching paper cups of cold coffee with shaking hands. Computers were disconnected one by one. Evidence lockers were photographed and sealed. Federal agents moved through every room with calm precision, while Tyler Dawson stood near dispatch watching the department he thought he understood slowly collapse around him. Naomi Carter remained near the center of the station floor beside Agent Daniel Brooks, reviewing stacks of confiscated files spread across a metal table beneath fluorescent light. Her leather jacket had finally dried, but she still looked exactly the same as she had during the traffic stop. Composed, controlled, untouchable. Tyler could not stop staring at her because the more the night unfolded, the more impossible it became to believe Ryan Keller had ever looked at this woman and assumed she was powerless. Judge Carter, one federal analyst called out from the records room. We confirmed missing evidence transfers connected to 12 dismissed cases. Naomi nodded once. Reopen every file. Another agent stepped forward carrying a tablet loaded with surveillance photos. Warehouse 14B was active as recently as yesterday afternoon. Multiple officer vehicles identified on site. Tyler felt sick listening to it. Not because he was guilty, because deep down, he realized he had seen signs for months and trained himself not to ask questions. The missing paperwork, the disappearing evidence, the officers suddenly taking expensive vacations nobody could explain. He remembered laughing nervously the first time someone told him, "Around here, survival means minding your own business." Now he understood what that silence had cost. Across the room, Ryan Keller sat alone at a processing desk while two federal agents reviewed documents beside him. His uniform was wrinkled now, hair damp from sweat and rain. The confidence he carried earlier that night had vanished completely, replaced by the hollow expression of a man realizing every shortcut he ever took had finally reached its destination. He looked up when Naomi approached him. "You set me up," he muttered quietly. Naomi stopped a few feet away. "No, Officer Keller. You exposed yourself." Ryan shook his head slowly. "You wanted me to arrest you." Naomi considered him carefully before answering. "I wanted to see how quickly your department abandoned procedure the moment they saw a black woman on a motorcycle." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Ryan looked away first. Behind them, television screens mounted near dispatch suddenly switched to breaking news coverage. Federal investigation rocks Atlanta Police Division. Corruption ring linked to evidence tampering. Multiple officers detained overnight. Tyler stared at the screens in disbelief while footage from outside the precinct showed reporters standing beneath umbrellas describing a massive federal operation tied to trafficking routes, forged warrants, and years of buried investigations. Then another image appeared briefly across the broadcast. Naomi Carter stepping out of a federal courthouse months earlier in judicial robes. Tyler looked toward her immediately afterward, almost unable to connect the two images together. Naomi noticed. "People rarely see what they are not willing to believe," she said quietly. Before Tyler could answer, another agent entered carrying a final sealed evidence box. "Judge Carter," he said, "Captain Hale has agreed to cooperate." The station seemed to exhale all at once. Naomi closed the last case file in front of her. 8 months of undercover work, hundreds of hours of recordings, financial trails, witness statements, internal transfers. It had all led to this night. Tyler looked around Midtown Precinct one last time and realized something that would stay with him forever. Corruption had not collapsed because of force. It collapsed because one woman refused to look away when everyone else did. By sunrise, the rain was finally gone. Atlanta looked different in the quiet gray light of early morning, as if the city itself had spent the night holding its breath. News helicopters still circled high above downtown, while television reporters crowded the sidewalks outside Midtown Precinct speaking into microphones about corruption, federal indictments, and the largest internal investigation the department had faced in decades. Across social media, videos from the traffic stop had already spread everywhere. Millions of people had watched the moment Officer Ryan Keller placed handcuffs on a calm black woman beside a sport bike without realizing who she was. But the part people could not stop talking about was not the arrest itself. It was her expression, the calmness, the patience, the way she looked at him like the ending had already been decided long before the night began. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere felt hollow now. Federal agents continued moving evidence boxes through the halls while exhausted officers sat waiting for questioning behind closed doors. Some cried quietly. Others stared blankly at the floor. The illusion of untouchable authority had disappeared before sunrise. Tyler Dawson stood alone near the front entrance holding a cardboard box containing his personal belongings. He had turned in a statement voluntarily 3 hours earlier. Every report he remembered, every suspicious transfer, every conversation he had convinced himself to ignore. His hands still shook slightly from exhaustion, but for the first time since joining the department, he felt something unexpected settling inside him. Relief. Across the parking lot, Naomi Carter walked toward her black Yamaha beneath the fading glow of police lights. The city skyline reflected softly across the motorcycle's polished surface while cool morning air drifted through the empty streets. She moved without urgency, carrying herself with the same quiet composure that had unsettled everyone from the moment Ryan Keller first stopped her beneath the rain. Tyler watched her carefully before finally gathering the courage to speak. "Judge Carter." Naomi stopped beside the motorcycle and looked back at him. Tyler hesitated. "Why did you really do it this way?" Naomi tilted her head slightly. "What way?" "The bike. The undercover work. Letting them arrest you." For a moment, Naomi said nothing. Distant sirens echoed somewhere across downtown, while reporters continued shouting questions behind barricades outside the station. Finally, she answered quietly. "Because systems like this do not reveal themselves when they feel safe. They reveal themselves when they think nobody important is watching." Tyler lowered his eyes. "I should have said something sooner." Naomi studied him for a moment before responding. "Most people do not wake up one morning and decide to become corrupt. It happens slowly. One excuse at a time. One silence at a time." Tyler swallowed hard because he knew she was right. Naomi placed her helmet onto the motorcycle seat before speaking again. "The important thing is deciding when you stop being silent." Behind them, Ryan Keller was escorted through a side entrance toward a waiting federal vehicle. He looked smaller now somehow. Not because of handcuffs, not because of cameras, but because the badge he once hid behind could no longer protect him from the truth standing in daylight. Ryan glanced briefly toward Naomi as he passed, but she did not react. She had never wanted revenge. Revenge was emotional. This was something else entirely. Accountability. Naomi secured her gloves slowly while the morning sun finally broke through the clouds above Atlanta, washing gold light across the wet pavement outside the station. Tyler watched her climb onto the motorcycle one final time. The engine started with a deep, controlled growl that echoed softly through the quiet street. Before lowering her visor, Naomi looked toward the precinct behind her. A building full of broken careers, exposed lies, and people forced to confront what they had become. Then she looked back at Tyler. "Never confuse authority with justice, Officer Dawson," she said calmly. "One is given by a badge. The other is earned by truth." Moments later, the black sport bike disappeared into the waking city beneath the rising sun, leaving behind a station that had spent years believing power made it untouchable. But in the end, the people who underestimated a black woman on a motorcycle never realized they were watching justice arrive